it's very much a character building type of thing, and you don't want to get too dispirited over anything, because there are going to be those points where things go against you. Everything works in, it's a cycle. Things will go up, things will go down as they move over time. Welcome everybody to another Outside Crowd podcast, and today's is a bit different because it's just me. I'm on my own. I haven't got the lads, they're busy, so I thought I didn't want to let the opportunity pass of doing something. And what I'm going to talk about today is a bit about growing your business, and specifically how to turn your business into a £1 million business. Why did I choose that title? Well, basically, I think over Christmas, I was looking through, you scroll through various Instagram posts and things like that, and I saw one for a company that was essentially offering the same as by way of a sort of coaching thing where people sign up and go to their seminars and all that type of stuff, which I think, good luck to them. That's something that could be worth doing. But I thought, if it made me think, what would be the sort of steps that I would take if I was advising someone or asking, giving someone some advice about how they can take their business to that sort of level, especially maybe if they're just starting out, if they're a small company, or if they've been going for a couple of years and maybe they're about, 100,000 turnover, something like that. So if they want to take it to the next sort of level. So it made me think, how did I start? Well, the first thing I thought, well, let's have a quick look at what ChatGPT says, because I think ChatGPT is a really good resource for just finding out, putting in some basic information and getting some, sort of not standard responses, but some good responses that model can give you. What it came up with when I bung something in, how do you grow a business to £1 million? Its focus was very much more like on the sales and marketing side. So the stages it came up with was, one, define a high value offer and pricing strategy. So that was positioning, targeting premium clients, putting together a pricing strategy. So how many projects you need to do to hit £1 million, your lead generation strategy, your target audience and marketing channels, marketing strategy, sales process and conversion strategy, how to focus on high value sales process, and then scaling it up to £1 million in revenue. So, you need an operations and team structure. And then they had like a financial plan to reach $1 million, which was basically just how many jobs you need to do of a certain value to hit that target. So, it was interesting, but there wasn't anything particularly mind-blowing in that. And I was comparing that with what I'd put down by way of my notes in terms of advice I would give. And my sort of structure was slightly different, because I was focusing more on the sort of principles and things that you need as a business owner in order to be able to appreciate what you've got to do to get your company to the next stage. So I got various points down here, which I'll have a run through, and we'll see how these goes. And there's a lot here, so I'm only going to be able to gloss over some of these, and some of these could be topics in themselves for the podcast and for future episodes. But the first thing that I was actually thinking of is, first of all, you've got to understand, what do you mean, first of all, by a £1 million business? The obvious thing is a company that makes or turns over £1 million. So that's something that generates 1 million in revenue during that financial year. So you have to be aware that might not necessarily be a very profitable company. Just because you turn over that amount, it might be that you only make, £1,000 in profit. You might not even make any profit. So companies that turnover far less might be far more profitable. So you have to start thinking as well as, why do you want to be a £1 million company? And is it the best financial model for your company? Because you might find that it takes an awful lot of work to get that to that level, and it might not give you the results that you actually want. And you could work smarter and quicker and easier with a lower turnover, but with a higher profit value. So there's things to think of there. Okay, so what's my next point? I think you need some sort of clear plan in order to reach that target. Now, that sounds pretty obvious, but when you look at a lot of small businesses, their focus immediately is on doing the job that they know how to do. So, for example, if you're a small landscaping company, or you do, I don't know, like the tree surgery or decking or whatever, or running any company, you start up usually because you can do that job well. You may not be a business person, but you can do your trade. So you don't necessarily think about the plan, but the plan as you get bigger becomes far more important. I think the analogy is very much, if you don't know where you're going, it's hardly likely that you're going to get there. So if you're going to some destination and you didn't know, what do you use? You use your sat-nav to give you your plan and your route to get to that destination. And you need to have that plan for your business. If your target or your destination is a £1 million business, then you need to have that roadmap, that plan to get you to where you want to get to. One of the reoccurring themes that sort of comes up with this in this sort of discussion is that you have to transition from just doing a job and working on job by job basis to becoming someone who actually plans for the future and to work out how you want to get somewhere and how you're going to grow. So it becomes much bigger than just, the one-man band type thing where you carry everything around in your head. You've got to start putting things in place to be able to get to your destination. And that all revolves around having a detailed plan. Right, where do we go next? I would be thinking about knowing exactly what your offering is. Now, that sounds pretty obvious, but in a lot of cases, what you do and the service that you provide can often be quite wide in its ambit. So say, for example, if you're a landscaper, you can be covering lots of things. You can be doing the patios, you can be doing, sleeper walls, you can be doing turfing, you can be doing planting. There's lots of things, elements of that, but you want to be clear about what you are good at and what you can provide your customers. Because there might be things when you start advertising or when you're looking for work that someone comes up to you and asks you, oh, can you do this? And you might be so keen to try and take that work that what you're doing is actually stretching your abilities. So when you deliver that project, you don't deliver it as well as you can, and the quality of what you provide suffers and you get an unhappy client. So you don't want that, especially early on and when starting up the business. You want to actually develop a good reputation, provide solid work, do good jobs, and ultimately delight your customers. So you need to be clear on what you're actually providing and provide that really well. And if you want to go outside of those remits, you've got to get the expertise to be able to know that you can deliver it successfully. So I would think I'll be looking at exactly what you do and also who you do that for, because it might be that, a certain target audience is better and more receptive to the type of work that you do than others. So be very clear on what your offering is, hone that down, and be able to articulate that and put that within your marketing brochures or however you sell your service. Building a business and taking it to the next level is a very demanding process. It takes a lot of mental fortitude, stamina, whatever, resilience. So one of the key areas that I looked down at and made some notes on was just the whole mental approach towards yourself and how you build the business and the characteristics you need in order to be able to have a better chance of building that business. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you are building a business, you have to be essentially quite a disciplined person, because there's lots of things that you need to be doing in your business. You need to be able to do those consistently throughout all the stages of your business growth. And if you haven't got that discipline and the self-discipline to carry on and to instigate all the things that you need to do consistently, then it's highly unlikely that you're actually going to get your company to the next stage. So I got to think like discipline and consistency are probably one of the biggest attributes that you need to have, because anything, I mean, particularly something like sales and marketing, a lot of all this stuff requires you to be very consistent in what you're doing. First of all, you've got to establish what you've got to do. But once you know what you are going to do, you have to implement it time after time and keep doing it. And then also refining what you do to make it better, to improve upon it so that you get better chances of success. But if you're very intermittent in what you do, stop start, you don't send out the latest marketing article, you forget about it, you don't you don't put out your latest campaign, those things will come back to roost effectively, not immediately, but a few months down the line. Because the one thing with sales and marketing, what you do now usually doesn't transpire or bear fruit until 6-8 months, even longer down the line. So it's very much one of these things where it's like sowing seeds. So you need to make sure that you are sowing seeds and you're sowing them consistently, and then you start to improve on how you sow those seeds, so you get better seeds, you sow them into better quality soil, all these types of things, so that you've got a better chance down the line of things coming into fruition, and you being able to reap the rewards of the processes and the consistency that you had earlier, you went about earlier on. Most business owners realise that you've got to put an awful lot into your business, so it takes an awful lot of demands on you, because you will be probably working very long hours. You'll also have to be very flexible and adaptable to be able to respond to different circumstances. You've got to wear lots of different hats. You've got to be a financial person, you've got to be a marketing person, and you're going to be doing a lot of those things that you've probably never done before. So you've got to be able to learn quick and adapt. And that is very hard going, and you may not see success immediately. It can be a slow burner. Businesses do take time, and even to get to £1 million in terms of turnover, that's still quite a nice chunk of money. So you've got to give yourself sufficient time scale, and you've got to realise the demands that it places on you as well, and that can have a big effect. You've got to be fairly robust. You've got to be able to look after your mental health. You've got to appreciate that things go up and down, and you've got to be able to roll with the punches at times. So it's very much a character building type of thing, and you don't want to get too dispirited over anything, because there are going to be those points where things go against you. Everything works it's a cycle. Things will go up, things will go down as they move over time. And when things do go down, you've got to be able to be strong enough and robust enough to be able to think, well, how do we get out of this? Making sure that you've put in those processes and things that are going to start to bear fruition, so that the downward cycle doesn't last too long. And eventually things will change, but you have to have that positivity to be able to drive the thing forward, especially when it gets a bit tight. And that's very hard, and it does place a lot of demands on you. You do need a good support network. And one of the things that I find is, if you're a sole director in a company, that can be very, very hard. And a total admiration for you guys and gals who do that, because you need to have someone where you can talk to, to help you through those moments where, there are like difficult and challenging times and difficult decisions to make. Often a co-director can be a good person to have on board because they've got interests in the company as well. So their interests should be aligned with yours. So you're obviously trying to make the best decisions. From my past, I remember there's plenty of times where I came up with ideas which I thought were great, but when I chewed them over with my, fellow director, he pointed out some of the flaws in those, and some of them we didn't go ahead with. And looking back now, there's a number which I'm pleased we didn't go ahead with. So it does help to have someone there that you can bounce ideas off. And if you haven't got a co-director, it's usually good if you can have someone who is like a business person who you can talk to, because you don't want something that gets too emotional. So if it's something that's likely to be a bit of a risk on the financial side, I know talking it through with your partner will be good, but sometimes you may not want the sort of emotive side coming out. You might want more of just like a dispassionate response to some sort of question. So, having a mentor, having a coach, especially ones that have actually been through that process before, can be another good way of getting some good practical advice. But apart from that, obviously you would talk to your family as well, because if there are things that are going to affect those, then you do need to talk to them. But you want to have all sides of the story, so that you make a reasoned and informed decision. Looking after your mental health, you do need to be able to have some time to be able to switch off, to do something that gets you away from the business, for even if it's for a short period of time, just to be able to clear your head. Because I remember so many times I've come back from work and my head is just buzzing, and you feel like it's going to explode. So you do need that ability to be able to just take your foot off the gas, let the steam out, from your ears, and just be able to chill out. However you do that, walking in the countryside, meditating, whatever works for you. If it's playing sport, exercise, value that. That is always really important. So the whole mental approach to running a business is extremely important, and you need to be that right sort of character. It's not easy. And I think over time, life throws stuff at you, and you'll soon find out whether you actually enjoy running a business, because it's different from just doing a job, laying a patio or whatever it is. It's, there's so much more to it, and there's so much more involved. The rewards can be great, but it takes a lot out of you. You have to give you a pound of flesh. So, make sure you are that right sort of character, and be aware of what is likely to come up, and try and deal with it in a very positive way, and look after yourself. The next point is, you could put it as part of the mindset thing, which we talked about earlier, but I think it's a point on its own. And it's very much like if you are, say £100,000 company, and you want to get to 1 million, you've got to start thinking now of what you would be doing as a £1 million company. Because if you're thinking in the same way that you are now as a £100,000 company, it's not really going to drive much in way of change. So you'll be thinking in the same way, you'll be thinking in the same processes, you'll be thinking in the same way you deliver the jobs. And that's not good enough. If you want to get to somewhere different, you've got to be different, and the company has got to be different by instigating different processes and different ways of doing business. So the way I sort of say to people is, well, think about being, what would a Balfour Beatty do? I was in construction all my career, so we used to look at some of these big companies or some of the other big consultancies. What would they be like? What do they actually do? So that then we could start looking at some of the things that they implemented, their processes, and then implement them within our own company, and start thinking in that way. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you're going to be able to implement everything that they do to the same level, but it gets you immediately thinking about the sort of things that you need to have within your company. So, for example, you'll need to have, the first thing is getting out of this idea of you carry everything around in your head or you don't write things down. Small businesses with, say, one director so often will have things just carried around in their head. They might do quotes in their head. They might just, not have any backup for anything. You've got to get out of that mindset and you've got to start thinking, well, we've got to have a process in place. And all these big companies have written down processes that make things work. So you have to think in that way. That will then be, that will affect things like your financial processes, your admin processes, your marketing processes, your job implementation processes, everything. So you need to have those key processes in place at a level that works for you. So effectively, the company starts to run itself. And once you get people joining your company, you've got something you can point to and say to them, this is how we do that job. So I think that's really important. So start thinking as a £1 million company at least, and ideally think of yourself as a larger company than that, and then look at those companies and see what do they do that makes them successful and what do they implement, and try to and implement some of those on a smaller scale for your company. So what processes do you need? I mean, obviously, as you grow, you're going to have more and more processes coming online. But the first things, where did I always look to start with? You needed to have some admin. So you're going to probably have some admin support. So what's your process for monitoring your incoming emails? How do you record your clients? Have you got a client and project list? Have you got some sort of register to show what jobs you've done, how long they've taken, all that type of stuff? So you're going to have admin, you're going to have financial processes. So obviously, like I've mentioned before, forecasting, cash flow systems, some of the basic things that give you the financial figures that you want. You would also need to have some sort of sales and marketing process. So that's going to give a list of all the things that you want to be doing consistently. So are you going to be getting a campaign out each month, so where you're emailing your clients? Are you going to be doing some sort of Google Ads campaign? All these things need to be sort of written down as a process that you can follow and will form part of your sales and marketing plan. You would also need things like how you deliver the projects on site. So what's the process that you go through? How do you set up the job? How do you ensure that what goes on site is done to an acceptable quality standard? Like taking photos throughout the job, timesheets. How do you pick up variations? How do you pick up changes? All those types of things. A system for ensuring, comparing your quote with how long it's actually taken, to make sure that you're making money on these jobs, somewhere where you can actually establish how much you are making on the project. So you need to get all these little sort of processes and things in place. Now, you can't do it all immediately, but if, first of all, focus on your admin, focus on your finance, then maybe your sales and marketing, bringing some of those in place, and then also look to see how you can improve your job efficiency. So there's lots of things that you can be doing, but you'll be doing those over time, and then also you'll be looking to refine those processes and make them better as you go along as well. So to ensure that, there might be certain gaps in your process. You might find that you haven't got a particularly good materials ordering process. You can then improve that as you go along. But once you start to get things in place, processes in place, and get it process driven, then you're getting a start to making things more efficient and more effective, and you've got a better chance of actually getting turning over more money to meet the target that you want to get to. As you start to get bigger, then you will need to start to scale your team and things so that you can actually manage more work. And I think as a characteristic of a good business owner is that you need to be able to delegate to other people. And that's quite a hard thing to do, because you've got to put your trust in other people, and you've got to ensure that those people are competent to do those jobs, because you can lose an awful lot if you're trusting that to other people who aren't sufficiently motivated or capable of delivering what you want. So you've got to be able to choose good people, and then you've got to be able to monitor their performance and ensure that your team works effectively. So being able to delegate is a good skill, because you're going to need certain functions like admin. You might need some marketing assistance. You're probably going to likely to have more people on site, so you might need a team leader. So there's various things that you're going to need to scale up your team. So you've got to be good at resourcing and finding good people as well. And I think if you can find good people, that's one of the keys to actually building a good business. The next bit is probably talking about your sales and marketing strategy, which a lot of this is covered in things like, you can put a search in ChatGPT, but you've got to start to understand that there is a whole, once again, it's this word process, there's a whole process in in identifying leads and taking them all the way through until they convert into a paying client. And there are lots of stages within that process. And I think though that essentially becomes part of your sales funnel. It's worth listening to the Open Door Digital podcast. They talked about that on that podcast, which was really useful. But you have various stages. And I remember when we were at my old company, when we're trying to work out our sales funnel, you had distinct stages from like identifying potential leads to sending out some information, keep sending out more information, trying to get in contact with the person, trying to set up a meeting, setting up sending out a quotation or a proposal, and through to conversion. So you might have had about 5 or 6 stages within our sales funnel, but you've got to understand that there is a process there that you go through, and you can do lots at each stage in order to maximize the likely potential of getting work at the end of it. And you can start to refine each stage and make them better and better. So say, for example, at the beginning, you've got to find leads. There's lots of ways you can do that. You can maybe do that through, Google Ads. You might be able to do that through getting databases of people, developing your own databases of clients. So there's lots and lots of ways of doing that. And there's also lots of things you've got to think about in terms of when you get in front of clients, how you can talk to them, how you can find out their wants, their needs, what you're trying to satisfy. So there's lots of things there that you need to consider, which can really help improve your conversion rate. And I'd certainly recommend, studying certain people who are good at that and good at the sales process, because there's an awful lot of psychology behind it, which, because lots of people say, oh yeah, I can sell. Selling isn't easy. And it's not just a case of talking. Probably the biggest thing you can do if you're selling is listen to understand what a client actually wants and what their pressing problems are that you're trying to satisfy with your product. Once you can understand that, then you have a chance to be able to explain or create desire in your product that they may want to go ahead with you as opposed to any other company. So there's lots in there. But I think the one thing that probably doesn't come out in any of this sort of ChatGPT stuff when you put in about sort of sales is the importance of just delivering a excellent client service and delivering a client experience which is the best around. Because ultimately, if people will forget how much they paid for something, but they won't forget if they had a shit service, and they won't forget if they had a good service. So if you were able to deliver the best service and you made that experience the best experience they could have, then you have probably done more in terms of marketing than any of this other stuff, because you've got someone there who will be able to vouch for you, be able to recommend for you, be able to write a great review. And I think as business owners, sometimes you mustn't forget that the primary purpose of what we're trying to do is to deliver not just an excellent quality product, but the way in which you deliver it to people, so that your client has the best experience going. And I always think, and you know, that should come across in how you talk to your client, how you engage with them, how you make them feel. They have got to feel 110% special. They've got to feel valued. You may not like the client. You may find that they're a complete arse who mess you around or whatever, but that doesn't matter, because if that one person comes away at the end of it feeling they've had a great service, then they are going to recommend you, and that is going to be the best thing for your business. So then, to recap, then it's always worth them being clear about what you mean by £1 million business. Make sure you've got a clear plan as to how you're going to try and get to that target. Look at your numbers. What does it mean to run £1 million company? What have you actually got to do in terms of sizes and numbers of projects? Make sure you've got processes in place. Think about being £1 million company now, even before you've got there, so you've got that shift of mindset. And then also have your mental approach to all of this. You need to have discipline, consistency. You need to be flexible and adaptable. And you need to be able to be quite a resilient person as well. So there's lots of things there you can think about, but that other big thing at the end is also making sure you deliver a quality experience for your clients all the time. Always treat every client total respect, even if you don't like them. You're not there to like them, but you're there to provide them with the best experience they can have, so they can recommend you. And if you do that, you won't go far wrong, and you will start to get a good reputation, and you will build your business. So there's a few things there for you to think about. Hopefully next time I'm going to be back with the lads, and hopefully some more guests. Hope you're enjoying the podcasts. We're enjoying doing them, and numbers are growing. It's everyone's podcast, so if you want to come on, we'd love to have you on. Just let us know. Drop us a line, drop us an email, whatever. If you can give us a review on Spotify, that would be brilliant. Say something nice, anything, some comments on Instagram. It'd be brilliant. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on the Outside Crowd podcast.